The Persephone Foundation, Timeline Archives, Timeline number 007, Crisis Averted. The point of divergence is 1914, when a certain would-be assassin decides to get lunch somewhere else. He misses his target, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, and while Europe tumbles from one crisis to another, the great powers never get into a great war. Indeed, in this world, global war is a hypothetical dreamed of by novelists. In this world, Adolf Hitler was an obscure painter, Mao Zedong a university librarian, and Joseph Stalin an alcoholic factory worker. This world has never known the iron fist of totalitarianism, the brutality of genocide, or the fear of nuclear war. In this world, the 20th century was an age of progress, not an age of terror. This is not to say that the world hasn't had its share of misfortune. The dissolution of Austria-Hungary was a dirty affair, which saw the old Habsburg Empire reduced to a small German puppet. The Russian constitutional crisis of the 1920s forced the Tsar to abdicate, and for a while, it seemed that the Russian government would dissolve entirely, were it not for the quick cooperation of Russia's liberals and military leaders. Poland only gained independence after a string of protests and terror attacks in the 1930s forced the weak Russian government to let it go. In the east, the new Chinese Republic and the Japanese Empire got into several small engagements, and when a Japanese-backed warlord attempted to create his own state in Manchuria, war was almost assured. However, a joint Anglo-American mission prevented the two countries from going to war, and a Russo-Chinese defense pact dissuaded the Japanese from trying to make gains by the sword. Decolonization was a period of intense soul-searching for the European powers, as the issue became a domestic one as the left-leaning parties argued that the cost of maintaining the colonies outweighed the gain. Some of Europe's colonies were granted independence peacefully, although the British were ousted in Egypt by a popular revolution. Exceptions to this rule were Italy, Spain, and Portugal, who instead granted the locals of their colonies greater rights, representation, and autonomy. Many of the old colonizers left leaders that they could trust, and various concessions, such as alliance treaties and the maintenance of old military bases. In exchange, the old colonial powers assisted their now independent colonies in infrastructure development. By 2014, the world is a quiet, if not entirely peaceful, place. The two great blocs are the British and the German-led European Community, and while both compete with one another on the global stage, they more often than not work together against threats to world peace. Asia has been on the rise, although the formerly dominant Japanese are being overtaken by the Chinese. The two countries have cooperated with one another against the Europeans during the late 20th century, although some fear that the growing rivalry may lead to war. The United States is the world's single largest economy, but its military is restricted to operations in the Western Hemisphere. They would rather let the British and the Germans be the policemen of the world. The Russians have recovered from their brief crisis in the 1930s, and are doing much better than the Russia of our world. And their petroleum exports to Europe have helped fund Russia's industrialization. The Ottomans, also unstable during the early 20th century, found their salvation in oil, and the Middle East is prosperous and peaceful. Indeed, the new skyscrapers growing out of the desert have become the envy of the world, and Baghdad even has an artificial ski resort. The only real problem is Egypt, which has been under the rule of military dictators since its revolution in the 1960s. The Egyptians have tried to usurp European domination of the African continent, and have funded organizations devoted to the independence of Africa, or wanton worldwide destruction, depending on who you ask. The Germans and the British have debated an invasion of Egypt, but they have not done anything yet out of fear they will start a war they cannot finish. Technology is somewhat behind, resembling the 1990s of your timeline. This is most apparent in aviation and electronics. Portable computers are unheard of. Nuclear weapons have been developed, but have never been used in anger, and no large nuclear arsenals exist. Indeed, the idea of having enough nuclear weapons to bring humanity to the brink of extinction is seen as absurd. Similarly, chemical and biological weapons exist, but nobody even thinks of using them. The population is about 8 billion, and pollution is a big problem. Points of interest. A stable, if not very rich, country. Popular vacation spot for Americans. Admitted to the Union on July 4th, 1975. Drug-related violence is being fought with Anglo-American assistance. The wounds of the dirty 30s have largely healed. The division was peaceful. Just barely avoided being annexed by Germany. The royal family is a common attraction for tourists. Still dislike the Russians. Causes alarm whenever the Pan-Slavists win elections. But the Serbians have long lost the ability to cause trouble. You give us oil, we give you rights. A failed French experiment, ruled by a wacky dictator that has claimed to have eaten people. The world's newest country, the Republic of Kush, just had too many differences with the North, in talks with the British. A battleground for pro-French and pro-Egyptian forces. Casualties still lower than your timeline. The East African Republic has become a regional power in its own right. Never adopted apartheid. Blacks were more or less equal by the 1970s. The Shah is just a figurehead now. Attempts to eradicate Korean culture were dropped in the 1920s. Local politicians often call for increased autonomy, but never independence. Thoroughly Japanese. Only extremists call for independence. Admitted into the Union on July 4th, 2001. This has been a Persephone Foundation Timeline Reading. Thank you for listening.